Starting a business in Japan will be one of the most challenging and yet, if done right, rewarding things you could ever do in life. My name is Elder Ripper and I've been operating a marketing agency in Tokyo, Japan for the last year or so. And today I put together 3 important things that I wish I knew when I was first starting the journey. So the first thing that you're going to need to figure out is your visa status. And unless you're a Japanese citizen, which kudos on your English by the way, are married to a Japanese person, or are here on a permanent residency, then the visa is going to be the first big thing that you're going to need to tackle. In starting a business, there are really 2 visas that you should concern yourself with, though there are a ton of different visas that allow you to stay in Japan. So if that is ultimately your goal, then maybe look into one of those instead. But the 2 that you'll really need to concern yourself with in starting a business is going to be the startup visa and the business manager visa. Now, the startup visa, I could make an entire video in and of itself on. I feel there's lots of complications and complexities with this visa. But just to summarize, I wouldn't recommend pursuing this visa as it stands right now. 3 reasons why that is 1, it only has a 20% success rate. 2, although it's called a startup visa, it really is only designed for you to apply for the business manager visa and give you a little bit of time to do that. And 3, in order to apply for it, I found that there aren't a whole lot of resources that properly explain how to do it. So it actually ends up being a little bit more difficult to apply for than the business manager visa, which is a bit more clean cut and has a whole ecosystem of services built around applications for that visa. So let's focus on the business manager visa. In order to apply for the business manager visa, you're gonna need 4 things. You're gonna need 5 million yen in a bank account in Japan. Can't be in a foreign bank account. You can do this through a couple of different ways, but suffice it to say, you'll need 5 million yen in Japan. You'll need a business plan that is quite conservative in nature, that kind of proves how you're going to be able to go through and live long term. Now, remember, Japanese society is quite conservative, particularly when it comes to money. So whatever business plan you put together, it needs to be quite sound financially. The third thing that you're going to need is a business entity. I personally would recommend, if you have the capacity for it, to come and visit Japan to set the business entity up. It's going to be much more convenient, easier, and probably save you a shit ton of hassle if you come in person. There's a couple of resources in regards to setting up a business entity that I'll link in the description down below. The fourth thing that you're going to need is an office in Japan somewhere. This kind of falls in line with the idea of how traditional business is supposed to be conducted in Japan, and so you'll need one of those to get the visa. Now that we've talked about everything that you're going to need for the business manager visa, let's zoom in on what it means to create a business entity in Japan. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to be covering whether or not you should set it up by yourself or with someone else. I personally would recommend that you set it up by yourself. It's going to be cheaper. It's not substantially more difficult than having somebody else do it for you, and ultimately you can go at your own pace. The main difference between going about it on your own and having a professional do it for you is really just going to be cost and convenience to some extent. Now, you're going to need to fill out just about the same amount of paperwork either way, but in one instance, you'll have somebody who will kind of automate the process for you. So, they provide you with the timeline and they kind of do all the conversation parts for you. But that does come with a cost. In order to have an attorney go through the whole application process for you, you're probably looking at about $1,600 on top of the $1,600 that you already have to spend on opening up the business entity already. So the difference kind of is, if you can speak Japanese, you should probably do it yourself. It's not an altogether too difficult process, and there's lots of free resources for you, and you get to save $1,600, which can make all the difference when you're at the beginning of a business. But if you can't speak Japanese, then it's more likely that you'll need to go through and spend on having somebody do it for you. And in the event that you do go with option 2, and pay somebody to make your business entity for you, you'll have the added benefit of potentially having someone to connect you with more professional business service providers. With the business entity and the visa in hand, the last thing that you'll need to do, and maybe the most difficult thing you'll need to do, is start finding Japanese clients. Now, servicing Japanese people has a lot of upsides, but also some challenges at the same time. Some of the upsides are they have an intense proclivity to loyalty. So once you get your foot in the door and actually start working with Japanese people, you'll find that it's easier to keep working with them. The second major benefit is that Japanese people are just fun to work with. Now the drawbacks. Japanese business entities really only like to do business with large, established, too big to fail companies. So as a foreigner who is just starting out with no street credit, you're going to have a hard time acquiring customers. It feels like you're getting married to them every time that you try to bring on a new business entity. And so just go into business conversations and customer calls with that in mind. Nothing is really going to happen too quickly, right? They're highly loyal people, which is a good thing, but it also means that in order to gain that loyalty, you'll have to go through a lot of hoops. Now, what I've found is it takes about 9 months to court a new client. This is for a number of different things, but the center pin is that everybody in the organization needs to get on board with doing business with you for the most part. The way that decisions are made in Japan is kind of a bottom-up sort of structure. So people at the bottom that you might be interacting with will need to get approval from all levels above them before they can really make any decisions on business. Now, although there are a lot of drawbacks, working with Japanese people is really rewarding. What you'll hear if you're part of any sort of subreddit or on the LinkedIn threads is how difficult it is for foreigners to do business with Japanese people. And although those challenges certainly do exist, it is something that is definitely worth doing. And just to wrap up here, what we've covered today is what visa statuses are available to you in doing business here, whether or not you should start a business on your own or pay somebody to do it for you, and kind of some of the beginnings of what you should expect when working with Japanese customers. Hopefully you found this video helpful, and if you have, please feel free to drop a like, or if you'd like to see me expand on any of the topics I've discussed in the video, love to see a comment down below. And hopefully you subscribe and you'll stay tuned for the next one. Thank you so much for watching.